Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring today's most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mok-yeon. December marks the second anniversary of South Korea's Indo-Pacific strategy, a pivotal moment as the region continues to sit at the heart of global politics and economic shifts. As geopolitical tensions rise, including North Korea's growing cooperation with Russia, the challenges of the Indo-Pacific are increasingly spilling over to impact countries worldwide. In Paris this month, South Korean officials, alongside experts and policymakers, are exploring ways to deepen the country's influence in the region, particularly through enhanced economic security, technological collaboration, and strategic alliances. With the Indo-Pacific's critical role in global stability and prosperity, dialogue and cooperation between South Korea and international partners, including France, seems more urgent than ever. For a deeper discussion on this, we connect to our reporter Oh Soo-young, who is in Paris to attend an international session on the Indo-Pacific. Welcome, Soo-young.
Lovely to be here, Morgan. Thanks for inviting me.
And also joining us from Bangkok is an expert on France's foreign policy, Arnaud Rouveau, Associate Professor at University Paris Dauphine. Great to have you, Professor.
Thank you for the invitation.
So let's start with Soo-young. South Korea this month marks 2 years since it released its Indo-Pacific strategy. And ahead of the milestone, you're in Paris attending an international session on the Indo-Pacific region. First, give us an idea of the core elements of the strategy and how it changed from the past.
Sure, Morgan. So as you mentioned, South Korea released its Indo-Pacific strategy in December 2022. And of course, the Indo-Pacific is a geopolitical concept. And South Korea's own strategy for the region was rather significant in marking this transition from its traditional diplomatic focus on 4 countries, on relations with the US, Japan, China, and Russia, to the broader region, stretching from the Korean Peninsula to the Indian Ocean, as well as to the Pacific. Of course, South Korea's foremost priority is security related, on deterring North Korea. And South Korea's Indo-Pacific strategy highlights how Pyongyang poses a threat to the peace and prosperity of the world's most consequential region, and also sets out policies for deeper engagement with countries beyond its traditional partners. Now, the strategy is grounded in 9 core pillars, each reflecting a commitment to inclusivity and cooperation. Now, this includes building a regional order based on universal norms and values, promoting the rule of law and human rights, and strengthening non-proliferation, of course, and counter-terrorism efforts, as well as expanding comprehensive security cooperation. Economically, it focuses on enhancing supply chain resilience and economic security networks, while fostering collaboration in cutting-edge technologies and bridging the digital divide that we see between nations. The strategy also underscores leadership in countering joint challenges like climate change, energy security, as well as engaging in tailored development partnerships. So in the past, diplomatic experts have pointed out that Seoul has mostly focused on forming trade relations and economic relations with countries beyond its traditional partners. But what differentiates the Indo-Pacific strategy now is that it clearly goes beyond economic goals to embrace its broader vision of both national and economic security, technological leadership, and sustainable development, really reflecting the changing dynamics of the Indo-Pacific region. And I would say this reinforces South Korea's broader foreign policy vision of being a global pivotal state, which is a country that reinforces a liberal international order and contributes to the peace and prosperity of the world.
Right. And now that 2 years have already passed, and given the current geopolitical changes that have been occurring, what are the key areas where South Korea aims to have a stronger influence, Soo-young?
Well, in response to all these emerging challenges and geopolitical risks and all these regional dynamics, South Korea is prioritizing its strategic presence in the Indo-Pacific region in key areas like economic security, advanced technology, and supply chain resilience. And to do so, it's launched strategic dialogue channels since it launched its Indo-Pacific strategy in areas like supply chain semiconductors, advanced technologies like quantum, and biopharmaceuticals, with not only regional partners, including the US, Japan, US and Japan, but also with countries like India and even European nations. The government is also working to establish robust international cooperation on setting global standards as well as norms for such emerging industries. South Korea has also hosted the AI Safety Summit, as well as another key summit on safe and responsible use of AI for military domain, and published a cybersecurity plan, among other key efforts. Additionally, South Korea is enhancing its role in maritime and regional security partnerships, particularly with countries that share a commitment to a rules-based order. So in this regard, Seoul is really expanding its scope of diplomacy since it released its Indo-Pacific strategy 2 years ago. It's doing so in a geographical sense as well, quite physically, as South Korea also held its first bilateral summits with entire continents and regions like the Pacific Island Forum, the African Union, and it's going to hold its first ever summit with 5 Central Asian countries next year. So these efforts, again, reflect South Korea's global pivotal state vision, which aligns with these ongoing global efforts to address common challenges and also opportunities as well.
Right. Now let's also bring Professor Luvo to the conversation. France was the first European country to articulate an Indo-Pacific strategy. Professor, what were the main factors that motivated France to establish such a strategy?
Yes, indeed, France was the very first European country to adopt an Indo-Pacific strategy in 2019. This strategy was revised in February 2022, just a few days before the beginning of the war in Ukraine. The French Indo-Pacific strategy calls for providing solutions to security, economic, health, climate, and environmental issues in the regions. But more importantly, this is also a question of sovereignty. We need to remember that France has overseas territories both in the Indian and the Pacific Oceans. Around 1.5 million people are living in these territories, which are covering around 90% of the exclusive economic zone of France, which is the second largest in the world. Such territories are like in Indian Ocean, like Mayotte or Reunion Island, and in the Pacific, New Caledonia, French Polynesia, or Wallis and Futuna. So when the concept, the idea of Indo-Pacific start to be elaborated in Japan and in India, France felt very much comfortable in it, in a way that this concept was putting a word on a reality which was already existing. But beside the sovereignty issue, Indo-Pacific is crucial for 3 main reasons. The first one, now Indo-Pacific is the economic powerhouse of the world. Second, this is where international norms are now being challenged. We can think about maritime affairs in the South China Sea, but also in terms of nuclear proliferation with what is happening in North Korea. And this is also where the Sino-American rivalry is taking shape, and it's very important to be here to monitor and to understand what is happening. But there are also some additional reasons, such as the spillover of local crises to a regional or a global level. We can remember, for instance, the COVID-19 pandemic. But also there is an increased connection between security challenges in the Euro-Atlantic area and the Indo-Pacific. For instance, the fact that North Korea sent troops to Russia to help the country in the war in Ukraine is a perfect illustration on how our security challenges are intertwined. What is happening in the Korean Peninsula have a direct impact in the security of the European continent, but what is happening in the European continent also have consequences in Northeast Asia in terms of security and stability.
Right. So it's very intertwined. And amid this situation, Professor, what are the biggest challenges and opportunities in the region for France?
Well, we are used to say that the 21st century is the Asian century, but also a maritime century. So to still be relevant as a power, France, but also other European countries need to strengthen their presence and their participation to Asian multilateral forum and to contribute to the defense of common standards such as freedom of navigation and common goods such as maritime security, protection of diversity, and of course to contribute to the regional connectivity. And one of the main challenges we are facing now is geopolitical uncertainty, strategic unpredictability, and the decline of multilateralism. Usual rules are now being challenged, and alternatives are not very well defined or not very attractive. So in this very volatile context, the best option for France is to work alongside like-minded partners such as South Korea to try to maintain stability and balance through a comprehensive and multilateral approach.
Right, so the unpredictability of today's geopolitical landscape even highlights stronger partnerships like the one between South Korea and France. Now, speaking of which, Professor, has the strategic value of South Korea increased in the area over recent years? And I wonder, what's your perception of South Korea as a partner in the Indo-Pacific?
Well, strategic values of South Korea increase at multiple levels, in terms of economic exchange, investment, technologies. I will just mention semiconductor, culture, soft power, but also in defense industry. South Korea now is one of the key players worldwide in terms of export of military equipment. So South Korea is a key contributor to the balance of powers in many parts of the world. South Korea is also very dynamic in diplomatic arena. So even if MICTA seems to have lost its momentum, South Korea created and developed some other forums, such as the Korea-Africa Summit, which took place very recently, Korea-ASEAN Summit, but also since last year, the Korea-Pacific Islands Summits. And it has to be noted that 2 French territories are participating to the summits through the Pacific Islands Forum, which are New Caledonia and Polynesia. And on the agenda of this forum, there is sustainable development, climate change, environment, disaster management, maritime affairs, fisheries, and all these points are also on the French agenda in the region. So there is a common perception between South Korea and France on the challenges that the region is facing. So this common perception should lead to a better coordination and cooperation to try to propose common answers.
Now, to Professor Louveau, what strength is France contributing to the stability and prosperity of the Indo-Pacific? And in what ways do you think France and South Korea could cooperate?
Well, France maintains a permanent military presence in the regions, with always around 8,000 servicemen, navies, and ships. And they play a central role in terms of cooperation through their participation to joint operation or training programs. They especially play a key role in terms of humanitarian disaster relief. We saw it very recently in Vanuatu, but also in Tonga, Fiji, or even in the Philippines. In addition, France deploy very regularly some other assets of its navy in the regions. For instance, the air carrier Charles de Gaulle will soon be in Indo-Pacific for a dedicated mission named Clemenceau 2025, and it will stop over in many countries in the region. And one of the objectives of this mission is to develop interoperability with allies and partners, and also to participate to joint training, especially with 7 fleets of the American Navy. We can also remind that earlier this year, France deployed fighter jets and military aircraft jointly with some other European partners in Asia to participate to several exercises such as Arctic Defense, Pitch Black in Australia, or Tarang Shakti in India. So in terms of economy, I think around 18% of French import are coming from Indo-Pacific, and 14% of its export are going to Indo-Pacific. And in terms of FDI, we estimate that there is around 130 billion euro invested in the regions. For the French Development Agency, the agency has a stock of around 9 billion euro in the region. It's covering around 25% of all its investments worldwide, and the regions receive around 1/5 of the loans granted by the French Treasury. And around 90% of these loans are related to infrastructure and digital connectivity. So the French strengths are almost on the same line as Korean development goals in the regions, especially in terms of humanitarian assistance, biodiversity, protection of the environment, digital connectivity, and also on shared values and respect of the rule of law.
Right, so there is definitely room for more collaboration between the two countries. Now, what about from South Korea's perspective, Soo-young? In what further ways could the two sides cooperate?
Well, I completely agree with what the professor just said. And of course, with South Korea and France being formidable military powers, and with both nations being very innovative powers, they have all these cutting edge technologies. There's already been a great level of interest in defense cooperation, particularly in terms of like cybersecurity. Also, R&D cooperation in strategic industries crucial to both national and economic security, such as artificial intelligence. So I'd say going forward, both nations could deepen ties in areas like maritime security through joint naval exercises, also counter-piracy initiatives in the region. There's also significant potential for cooperation in climate-related initiatives and green technologies as well, particularly in renewable energy and also climate technologies, especially when it comes to working with countries in the Pacific Island Forum. Now, France is already very much engaged in offering that kind of climate resilience partnership with countries in the Pacific Island Forum. And South Korea, of course, has its own experience of developing very customized technologies and sort of innovation policies for sustainable development. So if they put their heads together, I think the impact could be great.
Right, so we're going to expect a lot of areas of cooperation between the two countries. But what about challenges? What kind of challenges await South Korea and France in the region?
Well, of course, we have shared security concerns, first of all, in the Indo-Pacific, primarily the North Korea threat, of course, and its growing links to the Ukraine war. So South Korea and France, they really have this joint concern when it comes to nuclear proliferation, given the North Korea example. So they can actively cooperate in that regard. And France already, of course, actively participates in surveillance operations concerning compliance with international sanctions against North Korea. And with South Korea being a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council for a 2-year term, I think they have a greater chance to really work together on dampening these efforts by North Korea for nuclear missile proliferation. Mm-hmm. Also, the two countries face challenges when it comes to the geopolitical rivalry, again, within the Indo-Pacific region. And because South Korea and France both share the view that we need to cooperate and compete with China where necessary, and also promote the values of freedom, peace, and prosperity. They really need to take more, I guess they can try and take more tangible actions to promote multilateral platforms and promote multilateralism, especially as promoted by ASEAN countries. Both South Korea and France are committed to supporting the ASEAN centrality and the regional bloc's outlook on the Indo-Pacific as well. So hopefully South Korea and France can continue to partner in this and face up to these joint challenges together.
Now, Professor Louvo, the French Indo-Pacific strategy emphasizes multilateralism, security, and sustainable development, as you touched upon a while ago. Now, with geopolitical tension and economic uncertainty expected to continue with the incoming second Trump administration, how should the two countries respond?
Well, the new Trump administration will come into power at a moment where executive powers with their allies in Europe, Germany and France, but also in Northeast Asia, Japan and South Korea, are getting weaker. And it will not help these countries in their discussion with the new US administration. Under his first mandate, Donald Trump was dealing with relatively stronger administration in these countries. Nevertheless, he tried to push the line to get more benefits from his partner, with some success. For instance, now most of NATO members are really spending at least 2% of their GDP in defense. We remember also how difficult were the negotiations on cost sharing for the presence of US troops in Korea. So with weaker administration in all these countries, we can expect Trump to try to go a bit further and to ask for more concession from its partner, and it won't be any easy talk. So it's quite important now that executive and countries who are like-minded partners and allies kind to share more a common position to deal with the new American administration. On security issues, also, we saw over the last few years a rapprochement between NATO and some Indo-Pacific partners, such as South Korea, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand. The Biden administration even tried to say that it was favorable to institutionalize this relationship. At least this is what Deputy State Secretary Kurt Campbell said in Seoul last July. So even if I don't believe about a withdrawal of the US from NATO, maybe the Trump administration might try to revise or renegotiate its participation and to ask more effort from its allies and partners. So by weakening NATO in a way or another, it will have consequences on the relationship of this organization with its Indo-Pacific partners.
Right.
So now it's time for European NATO members, but also for Indo-Pacific partners to accept more responsibility and therefore to cooperate more together with or without the American support.
Stepping up cooperation would be crucial. Now, I'm afraid we'll have to wrap up our discussion at this point. Many thanks to Professor Louvo and, of course, our Soo-young for your insights tonight. We appreciate it.
Pleasure.
That'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Until then, stay informed and engaged.